I have Bela's number. Maybe I should, see if he wants to come. I remember wrapping up just our first set and like walking back to the green room, just seeing him picking with Cody Kilby and Ronnie McCurry backstage. And it was like, oh man, shit just got real.
Hey everyone, this is Keith Billik. Big warm welcome to all you ladies and gentlemen, howdy friends and neighbors. I'm really happy to have you along. For first-time listeners, welcome. This is the Picky Fingers Banjo Podcast, where we talk to professional banjo players about banjos, discuss banjo things, every once in a while maybe a banjo joke or two. Basically just all the banjo stuff that you wish you could talk to your friends and family about. Well, that's what we're here for. We're here to support you, and we welcome you in. Speaking of supporting each other, I have two very generous supporters who are the sponsors of today's podcast. The first supporter is Tyler Stiegel, and he is a banjo player in the San Francisco Bay Area. And Tyler is a very active member of the bluegrass community. He's actually a board member of the Bluegrass Pride organization. And what they do is they encourage the involvement and acceptance of LGBT folks into the bluegrass community. So great work, Tyler. Thanks for being involved in such a good cause. He also likes to promote the Father's Day Festival, which is also out west in California there. And he highly recommends that everyone go to that. So I would like to someday. It's a bit far of a distance for me to travel, but you never know. It might happen. I'd love to make it one of these days. So Tyler, thank you so much for your support. The next supporter is Jeremy LeBrun. And Jeremy basically just says that he lives somewhere. He didn't say exactly where, but it sounds remote. He lives somewhere where there aren't too many banjo players or other musicians for him to hang out with and play with. So as sad as that is, it is good to know that apparently the podcast is allowing him to make some sort of connection and learn things about banjo that he can't get from other people in his community. So thanks again to both Tyler and Jeremy. Really appreciate your support. To all the rest of you, I mean, obviously I got into the banjo podcasting business because I knew I was going to strike it rich, right? But that hasn't quite happened. So here's what we need to do. You all need to go to patreon.com/banjopodcast, and that's how you become a supporter of an episode, just like Tyler and Jeremy both did for this one. And I really appreciate everyone's support. Once again, that's patreon.com/banjopodcast, and you will help feed a hungry family in Detroit, Michigan, or you'll at least help keep a banjo podcast going. If you're unable to support through Patreon at this time, the best other things you can do is subscribe on your podcast app, rate it, 5 stars, of course. Share links to the shows on social media if you think others would enjoy it. And also tell the players, if you run into them at concerts or whatnot, tell them that you enjoyed the episode that you heard. That really encourages them and lets them know that it was worth their time to sit down for these interviews. I've already heard from a number of past guests on the podcast that they've encountered some of you listeners at their shows. And that's great. It's wonderful to give people like that the thanks that they deserve for taking time out of their day to sit down with me and record these things. So that's how you can support the show. If you need to get a hold of me for any reason, questions, comments, feedback, concerns, anything like that, pickyfingersbanjopodcast@gmail.com is the way to do that. And I love hearing from all of you listeners. Today's episode is a double header and features two people who are both involved in the Billy Strings band. The first guest is the banjo player for the band named Billy Failing. Billy is a really talented guy, attended Berkeley, and you'll hear all about his playing. And anyone who knows about the band called Billy Strings, fronted by the guitar player Billy Strings, knows what an intense challenge that must be to be any of the bandmates charged with keeping up with that guy. It's a very high energy show, very virtuosic instrumental performances, and Billy is a very capable player, and it's pretty amazing what he's able to do to keep up. The other guest is Andy Lytle. He's the sound engineer for Billy Strings. A lot of you know just through the types of questions that I ask some of the guests that I have an interest in sound production and that kind of thing. And I like offering more points of view rather than just a banjo player's point of view. I hope to try to maybe get some more of these down the road, try to get different perspectives on banjo tone and what people can do when they're performing to help maximize and just really be at their best sound-wise. And I think Andy was able to provide some insight about that. So basically, they don't appear at the same time. The interview with Billy Failing will happen first, but when you hear that end, make sure that you don't stop listening because the interview with Andy will immediately follow that. So yeah, 2-for-1 here episode on Picky Fingers. So like I said, first we have Billy Failing, the banjo player for Billy Strings. He's a very talented banjo player, extremely solid, can really hold it down with a bluegrass style, but can also get a bit crazier and a bit more progressive when he needs to. Really admire his playing and appreciate very much they took the time out of Billy Strings' very busy schedule to sit down and have this chat with me. I will say there is about half a second of adult language, so if you or anyone else listening with you is sensitive to that, then here's your warning. But other than that, here it is. Enjoy the chat with Billy Failing and stay tuned for the chat with Andy Lytle.
I grew up in Portland, Oregon, and I guess I started playing banjo just because my dad kind of tinkered around with banjos. And
What did he do, like a Scruggs-style player?
he did mostly like claw hammer stuff, but also kind of like, learned a little bit of the Scruggs rolls and that kind of stuff.
Okay.
So, he was always kind of playing banjo music around the house, and he had a bunch of old vinyl of like the Earl Scruggs Review and like Bill Keith. And
so that was in your ear basically from the very beginning.
Yeah, and I remember like kind of early on hearing like the Bela Fleck, the Bluegrass Sessions album, like the Tales from the Acoustic Planet.
Your dad had that stuff too?
Yeah, he had that
cool.
that CD. So I remember hearing that and thinking that was really cool. And he actually had this it's like an old Vega, like build it yourself banjo.
Okay.
That he made from like an old banjo kit or something like that back in the day. And like, it was the kind of thing where like it wasn't the best setup because like past the 7th fret, you couldn't really like, it was all just kind of one note past a certain point. Just
like the action was wonky or...
Yeah, like the neck was like super bowed or something like that. But
you could make some noise on it and it sounded like a banjo.
Yeah, it was enough to learn the basics. But
so what age were you when you started learning the basics on that?
Maybe like 16 or 17.
Okay.
I kind of went through like a phase when I was in high school of like playing a bunch of weird different instruments. Like I was into like bucket drumming and like tried out the trumpet for a little bit. And I'd already been playing guitar at that point, but I think it was kind of messing around on my dad's on that old banjo.
Yeah. Did you have anyone to play with?
Not really. I mean, I had like a rock band that I played with, and like I remember one or two times like with that group kind of like noodling on acoustic instruments.
Okay.
And I think I had a banjo for that.
But it was mostly like a rock band.
Yeah, mostly kind of like garage rock band.
Yeah. So was there a moment that the light bulb went off where you kind of realized that the banjo was your true calling and this is what you wanted to concentrate on?
So I went to college at University of Oregon for a couple of years, but I remember like the first year, like maybe the first month that I was there, I ended up like, I'd been kind of like messing around on the banjo for a couple of years, nothing like real serious, but I remember I was like playing out in a field on campus one day, and like this random dude came up to me and was like, "Stay right there, I'm going to grab my fiddle." And you had no idea
this was a stranger?
This was a complete stranger at the time, but he had actually ended up being a really good fiddle player. It's my friend Sam Weiss, and he and I kind of like jammed out.
Okay.
And that was kind of like the point when I started learning like actual tunes and like, learned like Clinch Mountain backstep and
experienced how fun it could be when you have someone else who knows the same material.
Totally. And it's like, that was kind of like my intro to bluegrass, was like playing with my friend Sam. And yeah, I guess from there we kind of like started a full band over like the next couple of years and
found some other
pickers. Yeah.
Oh, that's great.
Eventually I kind of, I joined another band up in Portland called Y East. And the guitar player of that band was going to Berkeley.
Okay.
And he encouraged me to apply to Berkeley as a banjo player, which I eventually did. And the next year I was kind of went all in on banjo and decided to kind of go to Berkeley and study the banjo. And
so who did you study with there? Was Wes still there at that point?
Yeah, Wes.
Okay.
I think Wes and I, like his first semester teaching was my first semester
gotcha.
as a student there.
Yeah. So what kind of stuff did they teach you that applied to the banjo? Or I guess I've heard from other people that they had to go to guitar classes or piano classes, but you actually maybe had the opportunity to play take the banjo class. I
think I was fortunate in that having like a designated banjo teacher when I started there. I guess Dave Hollander had also been teaching for the past couple of years, but yeah, having kind of a designated banjo program there, I got to learn like about how to kind of like apply these ideas like modes and scales and stuff like that and arpeggios and kind of be able to like apply that to the banjo.
Yeah.
And learn actual like kind of practical techniques of doing that.
Are there any secret Berkeley tips that you're able to share with people? Like, what do you think was maybe some of the most important concepts that you might even still use today?
Well, I guess one kind of cool thing that I was always like, that kind of like blew me away when I learned about it was like the idea of like upper structure triads, which is like, if you know what that is, it's like if you like think of like a dominant 7 chord.
Yeah.
And then kind of like add tensions as you go up. So like you got the 9 there. So just like having kind of that, thinking about the tensions of a chord.
And then how do you then apply that to, were you applying that to like bluegrass playing?
Yeah, I mean, I think like, I actually probably use that stuff like a ton in my playing just because like, if you're playing over like a 5 chord on like on John Hardy or something like that, like.
Yeah.
Just stuff like that where, I find that like 5 chords, a lot of time you can like apply a lot of like weird dominant theory kind of stuff.
Yeah, that's where the tension is supposed to be.
Totally.
In a way. So yeah, the more you can add, the more colorful it can be.
I found that like learning about those upper structure triads and kind of that stuff kind of opened up a world of like being able to kind of like color harmony in a different way.
That's very interesting.
Yeah.
And you mentioned modes and stuff too. What is a good way for people who are unfamiliar with modes and how to use them? What's a good way to break those down, or how do you find yourself using things like that?
I guess just thinking about like, in bluegrass, the modes that you hear are like the Ionian, major scale.
Right. On
a lot of like major stuff. But on like, say bluegrass breakdown or something, you might hear more of a Mixolydian sound or where that's kind of like, it's got that flat 7 sound.
Yeah, right. More of the bluesy.
But as far as like, I guess kind of my philosophy towards like modes and scales and stuff like that is like, I think of them as they apply to music that I'm like already playing, or I might like practice, like, something like that in my spare time to kind of incorporate that into my improv when I'm actually kind of like in the moment and
just kind of training your ear to be able to identify the type of sound you want and be able to link that sound that you want with a mode that will get you that sound.
Yeah.
And
or
then
like,
just be able to call on that.
Yeah. Just like practicing modes in my spare time. Like when I'm practicing, kind of like trains my hand to like where the notes are and like how to throw them in if I'm like, in the heat of the moment.
Yeah.
And like I want to do like a single note line or something in, I don't know, like Dorian or something like that. Like
totally.
Yeah. But like being able to just kind of like have those notes to draw on and have your hand trained to where the notes are, I think helps in kind of a musical setting.
So these days you play not only a lot of the single string type of stuff like that, but you kind of mix in a lot of the different fundamental styles that we know about as banjoists.
Totally.
How did you, and on top of that, you have to be able to perform it you guys play pretty fast and pretty intensely. How do you prepare yourself for that kind of playing?
Oh man. Honestly, a lot of the time, like I just kind of like put on a metronome to like, start at like 140 or something like that.
Okay.
Have the click on the backbeat and then just kind of like kick off, Little Maggie or something like. And then kind of go up to like where it's like. And just kind of like work on like getting the kickoff right and then kind of try and do like some improv.
Mess around
with it.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I think also on the flip side, it's good to like put the metronome on really slow and like play these same tunes that we play at like breakneck speed and like try and really like think of some kind of different ideas and like
your mind can come up with different things when there's a lot more space in between each note. That's crazy. But even specifically like single string, speaking for myself, and I know a lot of other people really have trouble getting that up to speed, at least in a clean way. Is that just about repetition and click tracks too, or do you have any secrets about how you conquered that?
I mean, I wouldn't say I've conquered it at this point. It's definitely still every day is a new day in terms of trying to make that happen. But yeah, I would say like one thing that helped me kind of early on is like learning, just kind of like pentatonic. Like being able to play pentatonic scales out of like every position going up the neck. Okay. Like say we're in D and we could do like. And so on.
That's minor pentatonic, right?
Yeah, minor pentatonic. Yeah. Or, you could do major pentatonic as well.
Sure.
Knowing it all just give you more options when you're like improvising, basically.
Totally. Did you always improvise a lot, or is that something that has come up more
I think,
with your current group?
Oddly enough, I kind of like came mostly from improvising only.
Yeah.
Like even to where like I wouldn't play actual song forms. Like, when I started playing banjo, it was mostly just kind of tinkering around on my own and like not even really knowing any tunes.
Yeah, I guess I didn't even ask you about that. You kind of said that once Sam Weiss, is that what you said his name?
Yeah, Sam Weiss.
Once you met him, that's when you started learning actual tunes. but I didn't even ask what you were playing before that. Is that the answer, that you were just
kind of
noodling
messing around? Like I might put on like, I remember like back in 2008, I was really into like Blitzen Trapper.
Okay. Yeah.
And so I might like put on one of their albums and like just play banjo to it, or like, you know, throw on Yonder Mountain String Band or something, because I was getting really into them at that time as well.
So just using them as your own jam
just jamming along
to
to recordings and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I guess, yeah, I don't know. It's almost been more of like learning how to play structure and like how to like learn the melody as Earl Scruggs would play it. That's been sort of my in more recent years. That's been like more of like a focus, just trying to get kind of the fundamentals of like bluegrass banjo.
You feel like you're kind of revisiting a lot of those fundamental.
Totally. I mean, like I could open up the Scruggs book and like definitely like learn a lot from just like brushing up on that stuff.
Oh yeah.
Just because
I think we all could probably, yeah.
You know, it's like as much as like improv and like single note, you know, single string and modes and stuff like that is like part of what I do with, you know, the Billy Strings Band. Like, I think also having the fundamentals of like the Scruggs stuff is like more important, because that's kind of like the jumping off point with the kind of crazy improv stuff.
Yeah, even just from, it's almost like working out as a basketball player. Nothing you do in the gym is what you do on the court, but it lets your body able to do the things that you need it to do. And that Scruggs stuff is just about, it's a workout, if nothing else.
It's like, you know, that's as challenging to me as like trying to learn like a Bela Fleck solo or something like that.
Right. So who are your main influences, would you say, or what artists have you always gone back to, or do you have like maybe even some favorite albums that you think have been the most influential to you?
Well,
banjo wise,
as far as like banjo influences, I would say like, you know, Bela Fleck was kind of one of the first people that really inspired me. I remember going to like a Flecktones show in Portland back in 2007 or something like that. And
did you say the first you had heard of him was that Bluegrass Sessions disc?
Totally.
Okay.
So yeah, I mean, I'd listened to him kind of like throughout my adolescence.
Yeah.
So like Bela is a big influence. I really dig Gnomes playing.
Sure.
You know, Scruggs, obviously.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, also like, you know, learning from Wes Corbett, like I was really inspired by his approach and his sound. And
yeah, they all do different things really well. It can be pretty inspiring for sure.
Totally.
You brought up Bela. I just saw online the other night you guys had kind of a menage a trois of
we did.
Banjo goodness. That looked real fun. Had you met him or played with him before that?
I'd met him in the like format of like a CD signing or something like that, where it's like, you know, next in line.
Yeah.
Kind of.
Good job, man. Thanks.
Yeah.
All right.
That sort of thing. But yeah, it was really cool. Like,
and it was you and Bela and Kyle Tuttle.
Yeah, Kyle is
what I'm referring to. There's a video going around where
totally.
You all appeared on stage together. Yeah.
We did like a Christmas special kind of show in Nashville, and Billy invited all the musician friends out. Like we had Lindsay, Lou, sitting in, and like Molly Tuttle and the McCurrys, and I guess Billy kind of like thought last minute, like, oh, I have Bela's number. Maybe I should see if he wants to come.
Yeah, excellent.
So he, just hit him up kind of last minute. And I remember wrapping up just our first set and like walking back to the green room and like just seeing him picking with Cody Kilby and Ronnie McCurry backstage. Oh, no. And it was like, oh man, shit just got real.
Exactly.
But yeah, we did a little Home Sweet Home twin banjo part, which was super cool.
Oh, that's very cool.
Then, Kyle came up at the end and we did triple banjo, Big Mon.
Big Mon, yeah, that's the video that I saw. That looked like a hoot. That's got to be kind of nerve-wracking, right?
It was a little nerve-wracking
in front of that guy.
Yeah, and even not playing with him, like there was, for the whole show leading up to that, there was a piece of tape on the floor in front of Bela's DI that he was going to use that just said Bela.
Oh no!
So just a reminder that I better.
He could be watching at any point, and
he could be watching, and
he had marked his territory.
Yeah,
great. Oh, that's
totally.
A hoot. So let's talk about your instrument here. What tell us about this banjo and all the parts.
Yeah, so actually this banjo I just got recently, and I was kind of in touch with Tom Neckville.
Yeah.
It sort of had interest in his style of banjo making for, a little bit now. And
for sure.
So yeah, I got in touch with him, and he actually sent me this banjo back in October, and I think it's kind of like a mix of parts, like maybe it's the pot from like a Neckville Phantom model.
Okay.
I'm pretty sure. I might be mixing that up, but then the neck is from the vintage model that he makes.
Okay.
So it's like kind of one of the things that I like about it is like it's kind of like a mix of like a modern take on the banjo and kind of the classic old standby kind of stuff.
So had you told him basically what you wanted, and he had mixed the parts to come up with the model that he thought suited you? Yeah,
we kind of like went back and forth a few times, and like he had kind of an idea, based on like the sound of like my playing, like what he sort of thought would be like a good fit from his perspective.
Okay.
Making the banjo, and like I sort of like told him what I was interested in, like, I wanted something that was maple with a little bit of like a classic flavor still.
Okay. What draws you to maple? You just
I think I don't know. I think it's just kind of like it's got a sort of depth to it that is kind of unique.
Okay.
I think, and yeah, I mean, I'm loving this banjo so far.
That's really cool.
It's got kind of the like crack that you want, like
yeah,
like that sort of classic bluegrass hard driving sound. But
sure.
Like you can also kind of get like deeper, kind of the deeper tones on it
definitely.
As well, which I think kind of is what I'm going for, like in my playing anyway, is like being able to hard versatile. Drive, like when I, when it's called for, and then be able to kind of like play stuff that's a little bit more modern and all that.
Yeah, prettier sounding if you need to, and
totally
as
and
pretty
like,
as a banjo is going to get anyway.
Yeah, and this banjo, like it's got a little bit more sustain. Okay. I was playing on like a Gibson Earl Scruggs model before, which I, still have and still play here and there as well. But, it's cool to kind of have that classic Gibson banjo as well as like a little bit, something that kind of like is a little bit between, a more modern banjo and that kind of classic Gibson sound.
Yeah, it has a little more variety to it.
Totally.
So even though it's a mix of parts, it's all Neckville parts.
It is,
from
yeah.
His different model of banjos.
Totally, and it's like, all the setup stuff is like his own kind of patented stuff. Like instead of having like individual, hooks that you tighten the head with, it's like 2 points that you like put like this tool into, and then like the whole thing kind of uniformly.
Right.
tightens.
Tom's been on the podcast before too,
sweet.
and he got the whole idea from his friend suggesting that he makes it like a mayonnaise jar.
Yeah.
And it's just like the lid of a jar that screws on to the
Totally.
rim. And once you think about it like that, you're like, yeah, that's exactly how this thing is working.
Yeah, so it's like all the like setup and stuff like that is super like kind of straightforward and easy, which is, it's good for me just because like I'm not, I don't have like the brain or the patience for like endless.
You don't carry the toolbox around.
Yeah, I'm not a tinkerer.
Yeah. Okay.
But
and that's a radius neck, it looks like too.
It is. Yeah. This is sort of the first banjo that I've had that had a radius on it.
I was going to say, I didn't think the Scruggs banjos typically had that. So is that tough to get used to, or you prefer it?
Actually, it's, I think the radius has kind of like made it a bit easier to like, as far as like the single string stuff, it's kind of like easier to execute some of the things that I like want to play that, I might kind of flub on.
Okay.
With my Gibson banjo or with the straight neck.
Is that the main difference you notice, that it's just more comfortable with some of those?
Yeah. I mean, it's
difficult?
like, I feel like you can have like the action a little lower and like,
yeah,
opens up the single string stuff in a cool way.
For sure. What about, so you have a pickup in there too?
I do.
Tell me about what that is and what you like about that.
Yeah, so I have it's a Fishman pickup, and I also I blend it with an Audio-Technica like clip-on mic.
Is that like one of those Pro 35?
I think so, yeah.
Okay.
So I run a blend, and actually our sound guy mixes that.
So you send him the two
both
lines.
And I use like a Grace Alex DI.
Okay.
Which it's cool because there's like a lot of like mid-range control on that, like
for EQing.
Yeah, like there's a really wide range of like mids that you can boost or like pinpoint a certain frequency that kind of like brings out like the natural sound of whatever banjo you're using.
Do you feel like you're typically boosting frequencies, or are you trying to cut out feedback, or like how do you optimize that?
So I on our rack I sort of we have like an EQ for our monitors, and I spent like a couple hours with my in-ear monitors and just like messing with the sound to try and make it the most like my kind of the most natural and close to like how my banjo sounds.
Right. Just locking it in how you
want it. And I found that like boosting some high mids and kind of like cutting some of the lows and stuff like that, I think it's kind of what I had the best kind of success with.
Okay.
In terms of doing that.
Excellent. What do you use any other boxes on stage? I know Billy, talking about Billy strings now.
Yeah.
Too many Billies going around.
Lots of Billies.
Exactly. I know he uses some effects. I'm not sure that I've heard as much from you. Do you have any other boxes down there?
I'm sort of like, the only real effect that I use now is I've got a pedal that's it's like a reverb and a tap tempo delay.
Mm-hmm. All in the same device?
Yeah, all in the same box, which, my kind of approach to effects is like, I want to find stuff that's like, I mean, I guess there's differing philosophies. I think like what I gravitate towards is kind of like having something that like, you can still have like a banjo sort of essence, mm-hmm. but be able to make it sound a little bit weird.
Right.
Kind of like, I think I might try and add like a phaser at some point.
Like a Pete Warnick kind of
totally. Like I love
vibe.
that sound.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I'm still kind of like experimenting with like what effects kind of like fit best with the banjo, I guess.
Yeah, it is tough. Definitely the fuzz boxes and all that just turns into it can be pretty messy pretty quick.
Yeah. There's also like, working with like kind of the lack of sustain that banjos have.
Right.
It's like you want to find something that like, it's like a tremolo pedal wouldn't necessarily be like the best fit for that because the note just
it wouldn't do
off.
anything. Right. Yeah, exactly.
But, work in progress there.
So how do you strategize of when you're going to use delay and reverb, or what? Are there particular types of songs that you just go to those, or?
Yeah, I mean, it could, I think it's kind of like some of the more like rock, if we do like a bluegrass song that has like kind of like a hard rocking element to it, I might like, you know, if we have like a down section, I might kick in the reverb. And then if we're getting, you know, kind of weird and spacey, that's when I might do the delay and
just kind of for a different flavor, different.
Yeah, and like another thing is like I sort of grew up listening to a lot of Pink Floyd, so like I feel like reverb and delay kind of allow me to like channel Pink Floyd through the banjo a little bit.
So you're inner David Gilmour, right?
Totally.
Cool. Awesome. We have a lot of banjo geeks listening, so let's even get more nuts and bolts. What kind of picks and strings and what, like, give us the full breakdown here.
Oh gosh. Well, I think strings, I kind of alternate between a few different ones, but honestly, I like never change my strings, like pretty much until they break on stage.
So you don't have problems with like you're not one of these people where your hand oils rust the strings or anything like that?
Yeah.
You pretty good luck with that?
Yeah, I think,
Cool.
yeah, I kind of honestly just buy whatever strings are available, you know, at whatever music shop that I go to on the road.
That's great.
But I get a lot of like Diodario strings. Yeah, I usually use kind of like the, you know, lighter gauge. I feel like doing that, I can kind of like play a little lighter and not have to like fight for every note, I guess.
Is that something that's changed as you're plugged in and playing more of these almost rock-oriented shows where you don't have to physically pull the tone out so hard? You can maybe let the pickup do a bit of the work. Do you think that's changed your playing?
Yeah, I mean, I think like if I'm playing into a mic in like a loud bar or something, there's like definitely a tendency to like kind of play harder than I need to.
Yeah.
And I think being on in-ears and like, you know, having the pickup setup going has allowed me to kind of like, you know, take a deep breath and like relax a little bit and just focus on like playing as I would, you know, at my house or something like that.
Yeah, just sitting on your bed or,
Yeah.
Definitely. So what about the picks you got?
Well, these are, I got a pair of National finger picks. I've actually been using the same ones for maybe about 6 years now.
The exact same pair?
The exact same.
Haven't lost them or crushed them or?
I've managed to hold on to them, knock on wood.
Yeah, congratulations.
But yeah, and then I use a blue chip thumb pick, which that was kind of a cool switch to make. I was using like, you know, plastic thumb picks before, and the blue chips have, you know, I think I've been able to like, you know, make one last for 2 years.
Yeah.
Where
yeah,
like
totally.
I'd just breeze through the plastic thumb picks.
Yeah, that's kind of the selling point of the blue chips is that.
Yeah, and not to mention, you know,
time.
the sound is balanced and they feel good.
Yeah,
all that
bit more
sort of
consistent.
stuff.
Do you still do a bit of songwriting? I have your solo album, and I was actually surprised at how. I don't know what I expected, a banjo album or something, but I was surprised at how much of it it's really a singer-songwriter
totally
record, which is really cool. Do you still write quite a bit for the band, or any plans to incorporate more of that into performing?
Every so often with the band, we'll kind of play, you know, one or two of my songs, but yeah, I've been sort of like on a little break from writing.
Yeah. Just because of it's not called for as much?
It's hard to get into the like songwriting mindset, you know, with the kind of schedule that I'm keeping right now.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm sort of like hoping to kind of get a little bit more, you know, I think our schedule's a little easier in the coming months, so I'm hoping to get a little bit more time to kind of sit down and write when I'm home.
Do you write on the banjo or guitar?
I haven't written that much on the banjo. I usually write with a guitar. just because you can get kind of the low bass notes and stuff like that, and full chords and
hear how the harmonies actually working out.
Not to mention, it's a little harder, thinking about rolling and
singing
new lyrics or something like that. It's
getting used to both of those at the same time.
More moving,
more
parts.
Challenging. Yeah, for sure. So you mentioned your guys' tour schedule. Tell people what they should expect to see if they want to come see your band, Billy Strings, in case they don't already know. What's the show like?
Gosh, I'd just say
maybe a goat. There might be live goats.
There might be live goats. I think last night was the inaugural live goat at the concert.
Hopefully the first of many.
Yeah.
And for people who want to check out your playing specifically, how do they track you down online to find your schedule or your recordings?
Yeah, so my website, billyfailing.com, I think I've got it set up so it lists all my Billy Strings dates.
Okay.
And then, I'm probably going to be adding some solo dates this coming year as well.
Oh, fantastic.
So that'll all be up there. And I guess social media as well, Facebook, Instagram.
Excellent.
All that sort of stuff.
Anything else we need to know about Billy Failing's playing and how we can play like you and try to keep up with the Billy Stringses of the world?
Oh gosh. Well, I don't know if there's any keeping up with the Billy Stringses of the world, but
it starts with the name, maybe.
That's
the first secret. Cool.
Yeah,
well, hey man, thanks a lot for your time, and been a pleasure chatting with you.
Yeah, for sure. Thanks for having me.
Cool. Cheers.
See you.
A quick reminder, don't stop listening yet. There's actually still one more short interview to go with Andy Lytle, who is the sound engineer for the Billy Strings Band, and he's going to give his tips and background in terms of best practices for getting a good acoustic sound. So here he is, Andy Lytle, the sound engineer for Billy Strings. All right, Andy. Well, you're not a normal guest on the show because you're not a world famous banjo player. So assuming that not too many of the listeners probably know you by name, why don't you introduce yourself, tell us what you do, what your job is, and how you came to do that.
Yeah, my name's Andy Lytle. I run sound front of house for Billy Strings. I started running sound about 10 years ago. I went out to Full Sail University down in Orlando for show production and touring. Since then, I kind of started a company with a music festival as well. So the music festival is called Orange Blossom Jamboree, and we were doing our audio stuff, and we kind of kept buying PA, and it got to the point where we were like, oh, we should just start a production company out of it. So we kept doing it, and I've been running sound for, I guess, 10 years professionally now.
Have you always been interested in acoustic-oriented music or roots-oriented music?
It's always been intriguing to me, for sure, just because it is a little bit, you have to have an ear and dial in those weird frequencies with acoustic music, with drums, it covers up a lot of those frequencies, and you can kind of fake it a little bit, but...
Okay.
With the acoustic music, you got to have everything pretty dialed in, and it's made me a better sound engineer, I think, from, starting with the band, because, I'd mixed, bluegrass music or country music before, but it was never, on this level, and, 4 or 5 times a week.
Yeah.
So.
For sure. What did they do at Full Sail? How did you train your ear to recognize those frequencies and to be able to really work with it? Yeah,
so Full Sail's an accelerated college, so they try and spit out a lot of information at you, pretty quickly. So it was a little tough for me to try and get my ear dialed in going to school because I was still young. I had kind of a party mentality too, so It was like. It took me a couple years to, be able to develop my frequencies, and, I had apps that helped me do that. So, there's an app, I can't remember the name of it, but it would send out a frequency, and it gives you 4 options.
Just as a tone?
Yeah, totally, like a tone. And you have to figure out which tone it was. And that's really how I developed my ear, and not having an RTA analyzer while I'm, EQing the monitors, stuff feeding back and you having to figure out which frequency is feeding back.
Yeah, and the longer it takes you, the more annoyed everybody who's within earshot is at you. So, and just for clarity, RTA, what does that stand for, and explain what that does?
Yeah, so an RTA is a real-time analyzer. It so your hearing is 20 hertz to 20,000 hertz. That's the human ear. Most people above 10 years old can't hear 20K. It's, we only hear like 16 or 17K. But what that is it's reading all of those frequencies. So, if something's feeding back, it's feeding back at not only a frequency, it's also a note, like a key of A or B or C or whatever. So you have to, pick that frequency and eliminate it, from the monitor. So that's really what an RTA does is it allows you to view the frequencies that are coming in and, you're able to make adjustments.
It's a visual representation of what you're hearing.
Yep.
Yeah.
Totally.
And also just to back up, just in case people aren't familiar with some of the terminology, the frequency is basically an interchangeable word for pitch. So a low frequency means a deep, low tone, whereas the high pitch is more like a piccolo or a whistle or something like that. Cool. So we're dealing with banjo players here, and you deal with a lot of banjo players and full bluegrass bands. Yeah. What are some things that maybe common mistakes that you see banjo players making in their setup, or what makes you happy as a sound guy on the other hand if a banjo player comes to you? Totally.
So one of the main things that I've noticed, if you're getting your banjo and you're just plugging it into a DI box where you don't have any EQ control and it's flat, that's usually the sound guy's dream, for you to be getting a flat, EQ, and I can adjust to it. What I've noticed sometimes is, frequencies are being boosted on DI boxes, if you have that option, and you're boosting frequencies to make it sound good to your ear. But once you're sending that tone to speakers in a room, it's not, you don't want to have stuff like that boosted. So I think having some stuff boosted and sending it a post level to me is something that's not really ideal. Sound guys will deal with it and probably not say anything to you about it. Yeah. But having a flat frequency coming, to the soundboard is what is, going to start you off on the right path, I think.
And what about banjo players who are maybe going through the decision of, should I use a pickup? Should I use a microphone? What should they be thinking about when they're making that decision? Yeah,
and it's really helpful to have both. With Billy Failing, we do a banjo DI and a pick and a microphone, so you kind of get that. It's not just a straight DI sound. You have some warmth to it, and you actually hear the picks hitting the strings. Right. Anything like that is great because you're just trying to represent the banjo on how you're hearing it naturally. So having a pickup and a microphone is great.
Definitely.
Yeah.
So we're already talking about ear training and frequencies and stuff like that. Are there any specific ones for banjo players that you want them to know about, or is it kind of just case by case?
Yeah, I think it's mainly case by case and banjo by banjo. Whenever I started mixing banjos, I kind of had the idea that every banjo should sound pretty much the same. Okay. And I've noticed with a lot, like working with, other banjo players that are like Railroad Earth or like, say, Leftover Salmon, they have pretty specific tones about their banjo, and it's all what they want to hear it sound like. I've noticed that stuffing more stuff into their banjo to make it have that tone, it's really what you want it to sound like, and trying to manipulate that, I think. So
in general, which frequencies correspond to different qualities in the banjo? For example, if somebody's having trouble with, I don't know, with it not cutting through as much, what should they be looking at?
Yeah, and that's totally, something with the pickup. You might need to get a better pickup, or, I've noticed that, the 1K, 1000 hertz area is usually pretty harsh. So people try and adjust that and try and cut that all the way out, which sometimes isn't good. Sometimes I need that harshness to be able to represent it, and then I can cut it back how I see fit.
Okay.
But yeah, like the 1.6 area is usually really hot for banjos, and it's, if it hurts your ears, that's why. That's the 1K area.
That's what really, it's like the ice pick.
Totally.
Okay.
Yeah.
Got it. What about like just a process that maybe bands in general that are just starting to play out and they're encountering sound guys at clubs? What, I don't know, maybe like from a sound check perspective or from an organization perspective, how should bands approach their first times dealing with a sound guy who's someone they don't know, maybe just works for the club?
Yeah, or not that aware of bluegrass music or how banjo should sound.
That's very common.
It can be very rough. It's always nice to have somebody with you that can, that's able to determine what's feeding back or what sounds harsh.
Yeah.
It's really up to the sound guy's job. And, I guess one of the main things is like having a having an EQ pedal is really helpful, because you can go to each individual frequencies and cut out what you think. If the sound guy isn't doing his job, you can just go to that frequency and cut it out yourself.
Yeah.
And they make those pedals like a 12-band EQ pedal or whatever for like $100.
Yeah.
But that will definitely help if you don't have a sound guy with you, obviously. So.
Or what about bands who have to run sound themselves from stage? Is there something they should know about what speakers to buy or how to set them up, or just some basics? Yeah,
it's all the room, totally. If it's a very live room, that can count. If you have your monitors up a lot and you're sending a lot of banjo and you have a vocal mic also right in front of you, that's all going to counter into. The lower the better. Billy uses all in-ears, so there's no stage volume.
Lower, you mean lower volume?
Lower volume.
Okay.
Yeah, so like having your banjo cranked up in your monitors just so you can hear it isn't usually the best thing. Trying to have a very low stage volume, I think, is key, especially if you're running sound for yourself. Like you have to start at a really good volume for you to be able to do that and try and manage it. So I think having stage volume, is the main I think factor in trying to make it sound clean.
Cool.
For sure.
So have you worked with a lot of different banjo players at what was it called, the Jamboree that you run down in Florida?
Yeah, so it's we've had bands like Grass is Dead and Billy Gilmore. I'm good friends with Billy. Okay. I've ran sound for them a bunch. It's not like I didn't know what I was doing, but it was one of those things where I was like, man, I don't know if I like the banjo. And then I really, I've gotten used to it, and I really enjoy the banjo now. It's like, it's something that is like really tony and wholesome if you can make it sound right.
Right, for sure. Can you think of anyone who maybe has a particularly good banjo tone that really translates well live?
I think Billy Failing is probably my favorite banjo I've heard coming from a live standpoint. Like, I think he has a really good ear on what he wants it to sound like, and that kind of reflects. But yeah, I got a chance to run sound for Bela Fleck the other night, and
he does an okay job. I guess.
And man, his banjo was, I'm sure for his live shows, he's got pedals and stuff, and he's got EQ stuff going on, but we hooked his banjo up straight into a DI box, and I thought it sounded awesome, Just flat,
like you said?
Yeah, just flat, and I can kind of manipulate it a little bit, so.
That's great. Are you a studio guy too? Or
I'm not.
Have you been exclusively live sound?
Yeah, I've been... whenever I went to Full Sail, I was going to do the whole recording art program, and I decided that I think that the live route was what I wanted to go, so I went that route, and I didn't record really much of anything until I joined Billy, and we've been uploading to nugs.net pretty much every show, and I had to learn how to mix and master shows, and I'd never done that before.
And you have to do that in real time? or they're uploaded like afterward?
Yeah, I have usually, I try and get stuff out like a week to 2 weeks after the show.
Okay.
Because I'm also driving the van.
Oh my God.
You know, like, yeah, I'm trying to find time to do it all. And, but it's really nice to be able to do that kind of stuff, to be able to listen back to the show and, you know, re-EQ everything, rebalance everything out, remix it all down again. You know, that stuff is starting to be pretty fun for me because I'm starting to get a little bit better at it.
Yeah.
And you know, like I've been asking my recording friends, like, hey, you know, tell me what it sounds like. I don't know. I think it just sounds good to my ear. I don't know if I'm supposed to be doing something differently. So It's all a learning experience for sure, but I'm enjoying it.
Yeah, for sure.
So,
do you have any? So for the people who don't go the pickup route, are there specific mic choices that, in your experience, for live use, tend to work really well for banjo?
So what we're using is forgive me if I'm wrong. I think it's the Audio-Technica AT30, something like that. AT33, 35. Yeah,
is according to Billy the one, and that's the little gooseneck clip-on one.
Yeah, and those work great. Like we use those with we use that with Jared's mandolin and Billy's guitar, and that adds a lot to the recordings as well. It's not just a DI sound to it. It's got that acoustic feel, and that helps out a lot. I don't have too much experience with other clip-on mics for banjos. What
about even stand mount?
Yeah. I'm not, and again, like I came from kind of an EDM world where I was running sound for a band called Zugma, and they're like electronic jam band. So whenever, you know, Billy's talked about, you know, everyone huddling around one mic, I've never done that before. So I'm excited to do it. But I don't have too much experience with all that, like, you know, different microphones that are best used for that. But yeah.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Cool. Any other tips or things that you want people to know about what they should expect trying to amplify acoustic instruments or what they need to do?
Yeah, just train your ear, you know. Everyone can be a sound guy if you put your mind to it, and you can train your ear to hear frequencies that don't sound good. You know, at the same time, there's a lot of sound guys where, you know, they know a lot of really good information to make it sound good, but it doesn't sound good to other people because everyone's ear is different. So, you know, adding compression to a lot of stuff definitely helps, especially with the banjo, like compressing the banjo.
Do you add quite a bit of compression to banjo?
Yeah. And I do a pretty harsh ratio for the banjo, like, so whenever he's hitting those really harsh notes that I don't want to... If you start EQing stuff out, it's going to take away from the tone of the banjo. So if you take away that whole 1K to 2K, that's going to destroy your actual tone of the banjo. You can't just cut all that out. So, you know, compressing it and making sure that it's being compressed instead of just sending you that harsh signal is definitely, you know, something that a sound guy should look into for sure.
So you EQ before the compression?
You can. It's all how you feel about going about it. I usually EQ and then throw the compression on, and if that's not working, then I'll go back to the EQ and adjust a little bit more.
Okay.
Because the compression's only doing so much, you know.
So get super geeky with it. Like, what are you talking about? By a harsh ratio, are we talking like 4-to-1 or even?
Even like 7-to-1 or 10-to-1 sometimes with like a high attack. So it's not just hitting the compression all the time. You know, it's letting it build up to that really crankiness, and then it starts to compress.
Okay.
You know, so I usually just adjust it with rooms as well. You know, sometimes you don't need that much of a compression ratio.
And are you only compressing the DI signal, or are you I'm
compressing the microphone signal as well a little bit, but it's not anywhere near as what I'm compressing. Like, so say my ratio is like 7 or 10-to-1 for the DI. It's normally like 4-to-1 with the mic.
So you do them completely independently?
Yeah, totally.
Okay.
So
interesting.
Yeah, and then also I throw the mic out of phase because with
the pickup.
Yeah, with the pickup. Okay. Yeah, because you're hearing, like, with frequencies. You know, if you look at a chart on how frequencies go. if those frequencies aren't in line, then it's not going to sound right. And you don't really notice it's out of phase until you flip the phase button and you're like, that sounds 10 times better.
You're hearing a bunch of stuff that you weren't hearing before.
Like you're getting those low notes. It sounds, cleaner.
Yeah.
It doesn't just sound like a mic fighting with a DI because the frequencies are not aligning,
And also I think it's worth noting that even for people who aren't using a mic and a DI, that same thing can happen between a banjo mic and a vocal mic if they're both picking up the same information. So yeah, that's another thing that's worth messing around with.
Totally.
Groovy. Anything we forgot to cover?
I think
any other secrets of amazing banjo tone?
Yeah,
that everyone needs to know.
Yeah, buy a really good banjo, and I guess start from there. But yeah,
practice a lot, probably.
Totally. Yeah, I mean, people have different banjo styles, and I've noticed that a lot. People pick it differently. The Bela Fleck style of banjo isn't the most traditional style of banjo, and I've noticed that a lot. That it's how you're playing it. And what you want it to sound like.
Definitely. I know there are sometimes two schools of sound guy philosophies in terms of making everything sound as much like that instrument as you can versus making everything sound like no kick drum really sounds like AC/DC's kick drum in real life. It's the sound guy making it sound like
Metallica kick drum.
Yeah, anything like that.
Totally.
So what's your philosophy with the acoustic instruments? Do you feel like you're trying to dress them up a bit, or are you only trying to let them through as natural as possible? Yeah,
there's some times where, Billy's acoustic guitar is, harsh and low end in some rooms, and then it's bright in other rooms. So, adding, high end to certain rooms and certain instruments, I'll try and obviously represent it to what they want it to sound like, but also to my ear. So with Billy's guitar, I'll throw a graphic EQ on the guitar and only cut out that one frequency that's giving me problems as opposed to cutting everything around it and trying to make it, blend.
Exactly.
So that definitely helps.
Great.
But, yeah.
All right, man. Well, hey, thanks for speaking with us.
Yeah, thanks for inviting me.
And dealing with all these banjos on behalf of us. We always appreciate it when a sound guy can appreciate it and not just tell us banjo jokes all night long. Although banjo jokes can be cool too.
I need to learn some banjo jokes. I think I'm lacking on the banjo jokes.
Well, I'll give you a list for sure. All right, man. Have a great night. Looking forward to the show.
Yeah, thanks, man.
Cool. And that's going to wrap up this episode of the Picky Fingers Banjo Podcast. Very big thanks again for the supporters of this episode. That's Tyler Stiegel and Jeremy LeBrun. Thank you guys so much for your support. Anyone else who would like to support an episode, you should go to patreon.com/banjopodcast, and that will tell you everything you need to know. If you'd like to get a hold of me, that's pickyfingersbanjopodcast@gmail.com. And hope to hear from you soon, and hope to see you next time for the next episode. Everyone take care.